Good morning and welcome to the Point. Well, finally, the primary election has come and gone. We now know who is winning and moving on to the November election. And we'll be talking a lot about those races between now and then. But before we get completely away from the primary, there are still a few bits of unfinished business. On election night, most people give acceptance or victory speeches, and they thank their supporters, and they usually talk about their worthy opponent. However, in the 3rd Congressional District this year, there was no such talk, at least about the opponent. That's where Justin Amash prevailed over Brian Ellis. He won his primary as expected, but perhaps not as expected were the comments he had immediately after he gave his acceptance speech.
We felt very confident going in, but I want to say thank you to all the people of Michigan's 3rd District. You really came out tonight for me. We had a really big victory with a lot of establishment interest groups coming out against me. But I always said I'm a representative for all Americans, everyone in the district, and the people of the district spoke and said that's the kind of representative they want to keep in Washington.
You had strong words for your opponent at the end of your speech there.
Yeah, he ran a smear campaign. It was despicable. It was disgusting. And then he had the audacity to call me up and try to make nice. You know, he's what's wrong with politics, people like him. And I've stood up to these people. They lie, they smear, they distort, and then they think everything's fine afterwards. And it's not fine. The people want honest representatives, people with integrity. And I'll continue to do that. I'll fight for liberty, I'll follow the Constitution, and I'll pay attention to the details of legislation, not just the bill title.
Less than 24 hours later, I talked with Congressman Amash to ask him if he still had the same sentiment as election night. The answer was pretty clear. Well, congratulations on your win, but let's talk a little bit about that. You've heard today a lot of folks talking about your comments as you won that election. You were pretty tough on your opponent, Brian Ellis, and now there is this unity event behind us. What does unity look like for Republicans, and 19 hours later, or are you standing by those comments?
Yeah, I stand by my comments. We'll get together as Republicans, but we as a party shouldn't countenance, shouldn't accept, shouldn't tolerate the kind of campaign that was run over the past 10 months, the kind of smear campaign, talking about a pro-life person saying that they would support killing baby girls for the purposes of sex selection, talking about an Arab American congressman and saying he's Al-Qaeda's best friend in Congress. Those kind of things shouldn't be tolerated, and we need to send a message as a party that that's not acceptable.
Let me talk to you about the 40% of the people or thereabouts that voted in the primary for your opponent. I make the assumption that you want them to vote for you in November. So how do you, by explaining the position you just took, reach out to them?
Well, absolutely. We want all Republicans to get together to support the campaign going forward. We also want Democrats and independents. And the message to everyone is that we need to be united. We can't have these kind of campaigns that are just smear campaigns, and we shouldn't tolerate them. We shouldn't have 10-month campaigns where we go after each other, tell all sorts of lies, and then at the end say it's just okay, no big deal. And that's what happened here, where someone came after me, said vicious things, hurt my family, hurt the community, and then expected us to just get on with it as though nothing happened. And that's wrong.
Congressman, final question. You're about to walk into this unity event. There are a lot of your colleagues and friends in there. What's the atmosphere going to be like, understanding that at least some of them didn't support you?
Well, we're going to get together. We're going to work together going forward. We've got a great party here, and it's growing. And I think we need to continue to bring new people in. I thought we had a lot of great, lively campaigns. We had new candidates coming in who were interested in being part of this for the first time. And I think we're all going to get together and work together moving forward.
With Republicans and Democrats through the primary, of course, they're looking for unity. So I wanted to talk with Republican Chairman Bobby Schostak about what Congressman Amash had to say and generally about what he thought of Republicans' chances moving into the general election. He was at an RNC meeting in Chicago, but was gracious enough to join us via satellite. I should tell you, near the end of this interview, our time on the satellite was running out, so we had to rush things up a bit. Mr. Chairman, the primary is over and there is supposed to be unity. You no doubt heard some of the comments from your nominee for Congress and your current congressman over here in the 3rd District. Not exactly uniting, but how do you deal with that going forward, going to the general election?
Well, look, the voters spoke. Congressman Amash had a victory. Congressman Amash is known to speak his mind and be his own guy. And we heard from him that evening, kind of doing things his way. And that's way he expressed himself is, the way Congressman Amash kind of, I think, overall is someone who is going to kind of approach his role in his own way, in his own manner. But overall, we had a great night. We elected 3 other Republicans, good, solid conservatives to Washington to replace some vacancies, and fortunately, Congressman Benevolia was defeated. And overall, across the state, we had a great night. So we're united, we're working hard together, and we're looking forward to November.
Tell me, on balance, given the folks that were elected both at the House level, at the State House level, and the State Senate level, do you feel more confident as you move towards the general election that you'll be able to protect the majorities you have and maybe even challenge for some seats currently held by Democrats?
Yeah, I really do. I think that we've got great candidates. We got a well-funded operation. We've got a great message under Governor Snyder and what we've accomplished the last, what will be 4 years. And the results will be that we're going to not only have our majorities intact, I think we have a very good shot at keeping or increasing our margin in the State House and having a good majority again in the Senate. And up and down the ticket, Bill Schuette will be reelected. Ruth Johnson will be reelected. I got a Supreme Court races to protect. Got 2 great justices there. Ed boards. I think we're in a really good spot because Michigan's come back. We're on a great road right now, and Governor Snyder's led the way, and the Michigan voters and citizens are feeling it.
You are at a big gathering of Republicans in Chicago as we speak. As this airs, you will be back in Michigan. Tell me about your big convention that's coming up in a couple of weeks. There is still that prospect that some of the folks in your party may want to try to pick another lieutenant governor other than Brian Calley. Is that a real threat, or is that something that you think with the election of a lot of precinct delegates on Tuesday is now less of a possibility?
Well, look, there's been a voice out there to attempt to unseat Lieutenant Governor, and he's done a great job. Brian Calley's been a great partner to the governor. But we have a process at a convention. It's not the first time it's happened, and it probably will happen again in the future, where when there's an open seat like there is, there's an opportunity for the people to speak. Now, there's been a precinct delegate operation going on across the state. We've had no role in it, so we really don't have a good feel for what the profile will look like. But my sense is that Brian Calley will present his message. Wes Nakagiri will present his message. They've both been working hard. It'll be difficult to unseat an incumbent because Brian has done a great job, and that's the challenge for his opponent. But at the end of the day, we are ready for November. We're going to have a very successful November. Our guys are in a great position because of the recovery of Michigan, and the voters like what they see and are feeling good, and will succeed.
You talk about the comeback, and anecdotally, we have seen things happening in Michigan here that weren't happening over the last 10 years. You can point to any number of what you would see as successes or what the governor would see as successes. Yet, when you look at the polls, the Real Clear Politics average, or even some of the polls that have been taken here in Michigan recently, shows this race for governor very tight, almost a toss-up. Perhaps it is a toss-up for Real Clear Politics, but it's within the margin of error of some of those polls. Does that surprise or concern you?
Well, look, Governor Snyder has done a great job in the reforms. He hasn't been a guy who's gone out and patted himself on the back and taken credit for all these successes. He's allowed the results to speak for themselves. On the other side, Democrat Governors Association has been pounding him, trying to elevate Mark Schauer and weaken the governor. And for as many millions of dollars as they spent, and which we and the governor have not spent a dime yet to speak of, it's not surprising that it would appear tightened up. But I think overall, you'll see us now coming out, the governor coming out as we get into the hot season, kind of into the red zone of this race. And the governor will create a pretty good distance between him and Mark Schauer. You got to recognize, all Mark Schauer's been doing is throwing darts. He has no plan for the economy. He has no plan for education. He has no plan for job creation. He just is saying what the governor hasn't done or could have done differently or better. But the effective is, what's his plan? And the voters see that all they're hearing about is, the potential of issues for the governor with no substance behind it. And as a result, Governor Snyder is still leading, more than I think these polls are showing, and it will really put the spread as we get into post-Labor Day period.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to cut you short. We have literally 45 seconds left. Quickly characterize the U.S. Senate race where former Secretary of State Terry Lynn Land is trailing in most polls.
Yeah, you know, Terry Land has had polls that have been up and down, but she's a great candidate. People are responding to her. Her name ID across the state is outstanding. Remember, she got more total votes than Granholm did in the same 2 ballots that they were on together. She's strong not only in West Michigan, but in Southeast Michigan, where she did very well in 2 of the 3 big counties there. So, you know, you're looking at a race that I think is going to be very close. It's going to be close to the end. She's got great resources. She's raised a tremendous amount of money and is really showing, I think, her strengths as she travels the state and connecting to the voters. You know, where's Gary Peters? Gary Peters is all about Obamacare. He's all about flip-flopping on immigration. He's not certain as to really what his stance is on cap and trade and some of the other issues that have come out.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to have we're going to lose our satellite. We're going to have to leave it there.
Terry Land will be successful in November.
Thank you for your time, sir. So that's the view from the Republican side. Democrats, as you might expect, have a different take. When we come back, we'll talk with the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party, Lon Johnson, to the point. Welcome back to the Point. Well, it's an election cycle. You know that because already you hear both parties accusing the other side of doing something that isn't exactly right, or in some cases, just flat out wrong. That's what the Democrats were saying this past week when they said that some top Snyder administration officials were misusing public funds. Lon Johnson, who is the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party, and Tim Greimel, who is the leader of Democrats in the state House, had a press event in Lansing, and we were there.
Today we're going to be sharing with you information obtained by the Michigan Democratic Party under a Freedom of Information Act. These documents are breathtaking in what they reveal about this administration's misuse of public funds and a pattern of abuse within this administration. You'll see in these documents some pretty outrageous and over-the-top spending of by some high-flying top officials in the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, MSHDA. The abuse of this travel is being led by its director, Scott Woolsey. Woolsey is a corporate CEO that was appointed by Governor Snyder in October of 2012. October? Was it? Yeah. The governor praised Woolsey at the time as, quote, a great choice to lead MSHDA into the future. So let's examine that and tell you what we found. If you go look here on slide 2, government documents that we obtained show that Woolsey and other officials in charge of the state agency, which is responsible for low-income and public housing, with vast sums of money, we're spending vast sums of money on extravagant foreign trips, limousines, massages, premium class airfares, fine wine, gourmet meals, and rooms at the world's most expensive hotels. Virtually all of this was paid for with public funds. The cost of these high-flying spending sprees is more than $200,000, again, in public funds. That's money that could have been used to support affordable housing and community development. Instead of these public funds were used to ensure that Woolsey and other top staff at MSHDA enjoyed a first-class Donald Trump-like lifestyle. The price of this abuse is even steeper than money. The cronyism and scandal that permeate the administration of Rick Snyder has cost us in lost confidence and a betrayal of the dedicated workers at MSHDA who work every single day and perform their duties without stretch limos, state planes, and luxury hotel stays.
The high-flying lifestyle being maintained by top officials at MSHDA is unfortunately not unique. It's part of a pattern of abuse that we've seen within Governor Snyder's administration, and it's a pattern that regularly exhibits lavishing favors and special benefits on political friends, on family, and generally on people at the top. Premium class trips to the Middle East and China, massages and limousines are symptoms of a long-standing and chronic problem at the top of state government. This is a problem of Rick Snyder's creation, a problem created by an environment where all manner of bad behavior by top state officials and political appointees and cronies is treated by the boss as business as usual. Because unfortunately, that's what it has become in Michigan under Governor Rick Snyder. Maybe in Rick Snyder's world of high-flying corporate government, some CEOs run their companies like fiefdoms where you dole out favors and spend lavishly on perks. But as governor of our state, engaging in cronyism and empowering others to waste resources is simply abusing the public trust.
Without commenting on the allegations made by Democrats, the director of MSHDA, Scott Woolsey, resigned on Friday, saying he didn't want to be a distraction. We talked with Michigan Democratic Party Chairman Lon Johnson about what he expects in the upcoming election and how he sees the primary just passed. Mr. Chairman, the primary is over. As we talked about a moment ago, you escaped the big ones, the U.S. Senate and Governor, as did the Republicans, but it was an important cycle just the same. How'd you come out of that?
Great. We came out united, and we're ready to show the state of Michigan how we're going to create a state that people can stay and succeed in, a state that's going to work for everyone.
It's interesting as we enter into this because of those lack of primaries, because we've known what the major matchups are going to be. But let's talk a little bit, before we get to those races, let's talk about the undercard. Let's talk about the state Senate and the state House races, where obviously you hope to make increases, and I'm sure, although I don't know if you express as much, you'd really like to take the House back. Do your primary victories and what you see happening on the Republican side make you more encouraged that you can do that?
Absolutely more encouraged. We're set. We need 5 seats, and we know which seats they are, and we've got great candidates, and we'll be aggressively going after them. But most importantly, when you look at the Republicans, they had oftentimes, even when the Tea Party candidate didn't win, they garnered 20 and 30% of the vote, spending no money. They're at civil war over there. Frankly, they're a hot mess.
When you look at just that, as you say, there were a lot of those folks that the more conservative Tea Party, as you refer to them, that did not win in a lot of, particularly over on the west side of the state. Some places they were beat by incumbents 70-30, 75-25, but you think even that 30 or 25% that turned out in that primary is problematic for
That's
Republicans?
Still a significant, when you look at the spending and what the Tea Party candidates spent and how they conducted their campaign, 20 and 30% of your base is now disaffected. Now, how many of those can come back over is still to be found out, but it still portends dangerous divisions in that party.
You talk about having to pick up 5, but you got to protect all you have. Are you particularly worried about some of those areas where Republicans are going to try for their own pickups?
We feel very confident that we can protect those seats because the voters are seeing what this governor and this Republican Party has done to them. They've raised their taxes they've created a senior pension tax. They've cut education by $1 billion, and our roads still are not fixed. Those issues are going to play this fall, and they're going to play and to our benefit.
When you talk about the state Senate in West Michigan, are there seats there that you're specifically looking at for pickups? Because for the past several years, as you and I have talked about, you don't have a Democratic senator that is west of Lansing or north of Lansing.
Well, we're about to put one in Kalamazoo. We've got 2 or 3 seats there. We feel very confident that we will pick up and make great gains in the Senate. We may not get to majority, but we're going to pick up 2 to 3 seats there, and then we'll make gains in the 2018 cycle in the state Senate.
All right, let's talk about this race for governor. We have just, you and I and a number of folks from the media talking about what you see as a scandal in the Snyder administration and what you see as a series of those. Talk to me about your plans, in addition, of course, with Mark Schauer, your candidate, how you're going to pursue this race for governor given the next 80 some odd days that you have to pursue it.
Well, we'll go out there aggressively and make our case. The voters of Michigan, there's not one constituency out there that hasn't paid a price for this Republican governor's unwillingness or inability to create compromise. Our roads aren't any better, our economy has not improved, and our education system has received $1 billion cut, and our seniors are paying a pension tax. When this governor took over, we were at the 5th highest unemployment rate. Well, today we're at the 3rd highest. It's not working what he's doing. Michigan can do better.
What do you have to do to take that message home, understanding that this is going to be a very costly race? Not just the race for governor, we'll get to the Senate race, but between the two of those, that means you've got to spend, and your party has to spend a lot of time raising money.
Well, the voters already know that. That's why this governor can't get over 45% in the polls. They know that when they look at the roads. They know it when they're paying a pension tax. They see it when their kids come home and they're having to pay an extracurricular fee just to do band or football. These voters already know this and they see that. We have to go out there now and show them how we, the Democrats, are going to create a state that's going to lift everyone up.
You can certainly disagree with me on this if you want to, but 4 years ago, there are a lot of observers that think your base, that your voters just didn't show up. They stayed home, that they weren't energized.
It's a fact.
So, if that was a fact then, how do you keep that from being a fact now?
Well, it starts with having good candidates, it starts with having a message that's compelling to them, and it starts with us working to get them out. And we feel confident that we have all 3 of those factors in place.
Talk to me about the Senate race. Congressman Peters has been tracking in polls ahead of former Secretary of State Terry Lynn Land. It's still shown as a toss-up as we speak. That may change by the time this airs. By Real Clear Politics, that is a compilation of those polls. What do you have to do to create separation there?
Well, I think it's being done. The voters have a very, we're seeking to replace Senator Carl Levin. 34 years of terrific service. And what made him so good and why he was continuing to be reelected over and over again is that the voters of Michigan want someone to go to Michigan and put aside the partisan differences and get things done. Congressman Peters has a record of doing that. Terry Lynn Land, unfortunately, we don't see that. She's a Republican National Committee woman who's going to go out there and be part of the partisan gridlock that we're seeing that voters are rejecting.
You've been in this position long enough to get a lay of the land, and I know that there were a lot of things you wanted to do, that you wanted to go out, you wanted to meet with your constituency, you wanted to meet with party leaders, but mostly you wanted to meet with voters and figure out how to make this a different kind of election cycle for Democrats. So tell me where you are in that process. What has it been like you as a chairman getting to know, not that you didn't know a good deal of them, but getting to know the rest of the Democratic base?
It's been terrific, and every room we go into, we're having to bring in chairs, we're having to park a little further away and walk more. The Democrat Party is fired up and we're united, and that was evidenced on last Tuesday's primary. We came out there strong and we're ready to win.
When you talk about the races that are important, obviously the U.S. Senate race, the governor's race, the House and Senate here in the state, but there are other races out there all the way down to the county level. Right. How difficult, not just monetarily, but physically, how difficult is it to keep all of those balls in the air at once? Because you do have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resource, human resource, and then of course that all important dollars and cents. I mean, you have to choose where that money's going to go, assuming that you're not going to have enough money for everything.
Well, we're greatly aided by our two great candidates, Mark Schauer and Gary Peters. Both of them are leading our party and doing a terrific job in bringing the issues to the voters, and our party is naturally following that. They will have coattails, and they're working day to day with not just their campaigns, but they're working with all campaigns and showing the voters of Michigan how we're going to create a state that works for everyone.
Former Congressman Schauer was on the show a few weeks ago, and I asked him about President Obama. The president's approval ratings have been varying, 50%, below 50%, sometimes hovering around the low 40s, perhaps right now 47, 48%, depending on which polling you look at. What does that mean, if anything, to the overlay of an election in Michigan or any other state, but obviously we're talking about Michigan? What does that mean for you as you get ready to go if you're president? Not typical for a president in his second term in a mid-year election not to have 65 or 75%. Does any of that impact the election?
Well, I think we're going to run on the same thematics that won this president's campaign in 2012. Remember, he won our state by 9 points. He has a record that we can be proud of, and you're going to see a lot of the similar themes out of Gary Peters and Mark Schauer. It's about creating a state where everyone can succeed.
One of the things that the president is still very popular doing is that's raising money. Do you expect him to be in Michigan? I know he's been in Michigan a couple of times in the past year. Do you expect him to be back between now and election?
I can't speak to the president's schedule, but I can tell you he is definitely welcome.
One final question I want to ask for you. When you took this job over, you came in with a lot of enthusiasm. You came in with new ideas. You came in with a plan, some of the things that you have shared with us, some that you have not. You came in with the idea that you wanted to make this a different kind of election, and as you talk about today, you believe you can do it. What has surprised you about doing this job that you didn't necessarily expect?
How united we are. That I thought, that we would have greater division and that we would have more contentious primaries. Democrats are hungry. We're ready to win. We're ready to lead our state.
That old Will Rogers line no longer applies.
This is not your daddy's Oldsmobile. I'll use that one on you. A little more automotive
Mr. Chairman,
focus.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, with 80 plus days before that general election, there will be a lot to talk about. And of course, that's what we'll be doing every Sunday morning right here. We'll have a final note about the election past and election to come next. To the point. The primary election is over, and of course, as we expected, there was a very low turnout. But this general election is going to ask for you to make some big decisions. Make sure you're registered and vote. See you next week. To the point.